showing you some of the powerful ways that it can transform your recurring revenue business. I'm joined by Kaisa from Stripe, who's a partner manager for Australia and New Zealand, who's going to give us an overview of the Stripe billing features. Then I'll talk about some of the best practices, approaches that we've developed over the years working with Stripe as an implementation and services partner. Then we'll be joined by Ben from Jobman for a fireside chat and real-life case study to understand how the Stripe subscription functionality has supported his business. I'm personally pretty excited about the ground we're going to cover today. There's some really innovative and exciting features in the Stripe subscription stack that take the platform way beyond the payment functionality that made Stripe famous. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we come to you from today, the Dharawal people, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. We extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people on the webinar here today. So let's get started. Over to you, Kaisa, to kick things off.
All right, thanks, Nathan, and hi, everyone. So my name is Kaisa, and I am part of the Alliances and Channels team here at Stripe. I work with some of our most important partnerships, like the one with Ahoy Ahoy. I've been with Stripe now just over 2 years, and before that, I spent a long time at Google in a bunch of different roles, but always with the kind of always helping startups and smaller businesses drive revenue growth for their business. Today, obviously, the topic is subscriptions, and this is one of the key company priorities for Stripe, but also an area that I'm personally very, very excited about. We're seeing a huge market trend towards subscriptions, and I just find it fascinating, like all the things that you can buy as a subscription these days. The other day, I was counting the number of subscriptions in our household, and I got to 15 and probably still forgot some. So it's just things like Netflix, Stan, YouTube Premium, Amazon Prime, toilet paper, mouth tapes, dog food, dog treats, like you name it, anything can be bought on subscription today. So we'll dive into that a little bit more detail. Obviously, for those of you that might not be so familiar with Stripe, we are a global company providing financial infrastructure for businesses of all sizes. The company initially started by 2 Irish brothers in 2011 by just taking online payments for startups. And then last year, 13 years later, businesses on Stripe were processing over $1 trillion in payments, which is the equivalent of about 1% of the global GDP, or 3 times the GDP of Finland, which is my home country. So pretty, quite a lot. And we've got over 2 million businesses on the platform, ranging from startups and sole traders to some of the biggest enterprises in the world, like Amazon, Ford, and Stan and Wesfarmers here in Australia. And in that time, obviously, not just has the size of the company grown, but also our like product range. So not just, we don't just take online payments anymore, but we can also take like help businesses with pretty much any action they need to take with money. So we can take in-person payments as well. And we've also helped a lot of SaaS companies embed payments into their platform and helping them to become that one-stop shop for their customers, facilitating a lot more functionality than just their kind of core product, I guess. And then finally, we have the revenue and finance automation suite, which is, of course, the focus of today's session. Now, recurring revenue obviously sounds great, and really it seems to be the holy grail of any business wanting to either get their initial investment or scale their business to the next level. It can help unlock growth and engagement. It can improve cash flow. It lowers customer acquisition costs and streamlines your operations. There's a lot of benefits to it. And as I said, we are seeing a huge trend towards more and more businesses wanting to get on this bandwagon and offer a subscription. But it can be tricky to get right. Of course, to manage recurring payments, you need to either build or integrate a billing system. And our customers are constantly telling us that their billing systems are really getting in the way of their growth in a bunch of different areas. But one such area is low authorization rates on these recurring transactions. So churn is a big issue. And one area of churn is this involuntary churn. So that's when your customer didn't mean to cancel the subscription, but for one reason or another, the payment failed. So they're seeing low or high rates of involuntary churn. The other area is just it can be really tricky to update your pricing or your pricing models with some of the traditional systems. Geo expansion is something, if you are kind of based in a smaller market, probably sooner or later you're going to want to expand internationally. And that can be really tricky because to enter any new market, you then need to think about payment methods and regulatory requirements in those areas as well. And finally, a lot of these billing systems, they can be a bit disjointed from other core systems like your payments or accounting systems, because essentially they become these integration hubs that then require connectors and updates to each of the adjacent solutions. And if you're a larger business that has grown over time or maybe grown by acquisition, the chances are that you have multiple billing systems, like different platforms and channels that then further contribute to the complexity and I guess the disjointed customer experience and the risk of misbillings as a result as well. We can help with a lot of these different areas. There are currently, do you want to flip to the next slide, Nathan? Thank you. There are over 300,000 businesses on Stripe billing, and a lot of them have come to us because of one or more of these challenges that they were facing. So our customers have seen improved collections. They've been able to better optimize and test their pricing strategies, and in some cases even quickly change business models when that's been required. They can scale globally while setting themselves up to meet any kind of future business challenges that they might encounter. So we'll click into each of these in a bit more detail now. So first, this is just maximizing revenue and really improving collections. And there's a number of ways that we can help customers do that. So first, and the most important and key takeaway here is that Stripe is the only provider out there that unifies payments and billing. And that can massively help optimize and improve these authorization rates. So although if you're familiar with Stripe for payments, you'll know that one of the things that we're really strong in, I would say secret sauce, but I guess it's not so secret, is that we have these highly optimized and really high converting user interfaces. And then beyond the user interface, so what the user interfaces, I guess, do is that they really help make sure that the consumer has no friction and can kind of complete the purchase. But then once that's done, there's a lot that we do on the back end as well to I guess, optimize those payments and make sure that the legit transactions will actually go through, which is what we measure as authorization rates. The second thing is on just that like revenue capture and minimizing that involuntary churn. Because of the scale that we operate in, we've been able to make the most of machine learning to really identify the optimal times to retry any failed payments. So instead of relying on some like old school time-based retries, we can do the retry at a time when the likelihood of capturing that payment is the highest. So for example, maybe we have seen that card being successfully used somewhere else in the Stripe network, but it failed for your business, then we can retry it at that time and make sure that you get the revenue. And this feature of the smart retries, this has helped some of our customers in like collectively recover 3.4 billion in revenue in the last year, which is not a small amount of money. We also provide modern collection tools with payments embedded on each of the invoices. We do things like reminder emails and dashboard trackers. And a fun fact there is that 87% of Stripe invoices are paid in 24 hours. I don't know what that number is for like your normal average invoices. I'm pretty sure that it's quite a bit higher than that. And then, of course, like all of this is really only helpful if your system is reliable. So we support 5 nines of uptime, and we can power more than 25 million subscription renewals for one merchant on a single day. So regardless of the scale that you operate in, you can rely on uninterrupted billing service. Go on the next slide. The second is just this business agility through, I guess, being able to quickly, next slide. And that one, yeah, great. So I guess for newer businesses or someone who is just getting started with subscriptions, it's really important to be able to test and learn and then adapt as necessary. Very few businesses can like come up with this perfect pricing model from the get-go. More than likely, you're going to have to test a few different ways to kind of find the one that works for your business. So with Stripe billing, you can easily test different pricing, and you can try different pricing models, whether that's like flat rate or tiered or usage-based. pricing. And usage-based pricing especially is one that we're seeing a lot of growth in. Obviously, it's been used by the likes of your cloud infrastructure providers for the longest time. Stripe, I guess, is based on usage-based billing. But even just there's a digital security firm that's charging for like each bug that they catch, or a sales platform charging per email that's being sent. So there's a lot of different use cases for that. OpenAI is one customer. Obviously, everyone knows ChatGPT. They are relying on Stripe billing and our checkout to power the premium subscriptions for ChatGPT Plus. So with our pre-built hosted payments page, they've been able to offer one-time purchases and monthly and usage-based subscriptions on this product, and they're reaching their global customers with over 25 payment methods that they're able to offer. And then there's the scaling to new markets. So thanks to the global payments infrastructure that we have been building over the years, you can easily expand globally and roll out your subscriptions to these new markets as well. So we operate in 47 countries and we support over 100 payment methods and 130 different currencies. So it just means that wherever you want to expand, you can always offer your customers preferred payment methods in those countries, making sure that you can, optimize conversions in those countries. And in different markets, we're seeing that consumers have different preferences for paying for their subscriptions. So some don't like to do it with credit card, but prefer direct debit, for example. And then you can make choices based on the market preferences. We can also provide guidance on local invoicing requirements. And then with tax, that's something that no one really likes to deal with. So we can help you automate tax collection and manage your tax obligation in each of the countries that you want to expand to. And then finally, there's the systems growth piece. So historically, I guess to achieve all of these things, you've needed to have multiple different systems. So one for billing, one for invoicing, tax, revenue recognition, and payments. And as we already discussed, like managing this can take a lot of resources and cause a lot of headache as you grow. So by consolidating all of these vendors into just one suite of revenue tools, our customers have been improved their efficiency by a lot. And we can also do integrations to a bunch of different third-party software. And I know Nathan will be talking about this a little bit more through some partner integration services that we have. And of course, it has all been validated by those 300,000 customers, but not just them. There's also analysts like Gartner and Forrester that have acknowledged Stripe as a leader in the recurring billing applications. And actually, Stripe is the only player that ranks as a leader in both the payments and billing Forrester Wave rankings. And this just kind of comes back to the original point of by like integrating payments and billing, it really gives you better performance and can help you accelerate that revenue growth. So that was pretty quick, but I hope that gave you kind of a high level overview of what's possible. And then, of course, like we would love to talk a bit more about your specific challenges and whether or not Stripe can help with them after. But I will hand over to Nathan now to go through a little bit more like I guess practical tips and some best practices on how you can get the most out of these tools.
Cool. Thanks, Kaisa. So just a little bit about us. I come from a technical background, but have been operating businesses for some time, formerly CTO at a company called SAI Global. These days, we have a boutique technology and consulting business based in Wollongong, New South Wales, with all onshore resources. We've got strong ties to the local university, having graduated from their startup program. And the idea is that we take a holistic approach to product development, working with our clients to optimize the outcomes. And that's across web development, mobile, and IoT. We're a Xero custom development partner, an app partner. We're a Stripe app partner, Stripe services partner, and an AWS partner. So we talk about best practices, and it's kind of like, well, why do you even need to do these things? And based on our experience working with lots of Stripe customers, we've found that there's some pretty simple things you can do to make a really big difference. So primarily, it's about consistency across your Stripe subscriptions. We see people sometimes making lots and lots of products every single time they start a subscription. And what that impacts really is your reportability. So it's important to get that right so that you can always have very consistent reporting from within Stripe. Plus, also, it lets you leverage a lot of the built-in Stripe functionality and no-code integration, and I'll show you some of that in a minute. And primarily, it's about flowing that data through into your other systems, like your finance systems. And if you can flow the detail of the Stripe data all the way through, you can make your internal team's life a lot easier and your accountant's life a lot easier as well. So how do we do that? Really, there's two ways. The first is about configuring Stripe for success. And then the second part is getting Stripe to connect to your other internal systems and apps. So thinking about configuring Stripe for success, where we always start is with products. So a single product can have multiple prices in the Stripe world, and it's important to plan out your products carefully. So you think about how you're going to want to report on these things in the future. And once you start attaching them to subscriptions, it's not simple to kind of pull them out and replace them. So we see people fall into this trap of making lots and lots of products every time they make a subscription. One of the key elements is to think about your pricing, because Stripe offers lots of different ways to price your products. So you can go flat rate, packaged, tiered, or usage-based pricing. And I'm just going to jump into Stripe here to give you a sense of how that works. So when you attach a price to a product, first off, we're talking primarily about recurring transactions today. So as soon as we tick that recurring, that makes this product available in the subscription side of Stripe. Talk about the types of pricing. Here's those 4 types that we talked about. Flat rate is really quite simple. So for example, if you have a product and it costs $50 a month, you can just pop it in as a flat rate and you set the frequency of that billing. Package pricing is a little bit different. So this is where we're setting a price for a number of units that you want to sell. Tiered pricing, a little bit more complex again, but a very common use case. So this is where we say, okay, for the first 5 units per month, they'll be $10 per unit. And then for the next 5 units, they'll be $8 per unit. And from there on, they'll be $6 per unit. And then when you create a subscription, you say this person is subscribing for 13 units, and it'll automatically work out the price, which in that case will be $6 per unit for the number of units that they're buying. And then the last is usage-based that Kaisa was referring to before. And this is a super interesting, relatively new feature in Stripe. And what it lets you do is you can create these things that Stripe calls meters. And you can have your software system talk to Stripe to say, hey, they bought another one, or they used another one, or we found another bot, or whatever the unit of measure is. And then Stripe will dynamically work out the pricing when it comes time to charge this client on their monthly invoice. So as you can see, there's a lot of flexibility around pricing and lots of different ways to configure it in Stripe. And it's really important to kind of consider that up front before you jump into creating subscriptions. Talking of subscriptions, the subscription in Stripe is the thing that takes a product and bills it to a client. And it can have all sorts of different attributes, like you can set up the period of those subscriptions, you can set up Stripe tax, free trials, discounts, and even phases of subscriptions. So let's just jump into subscriptions for a second so I can show you those. The basic premise is that you attach a recurring product. So I'm going to attach this product here that's $100 a year. As I said, you can attach multiple products to a single subscription. So I might do another one here that relies on a certain number of units. So I'm going to make this like that they're buying 11 of them. Over here on the right-hand side in the UI, you can get a really quick preview of the invoice as well. It'll do that once I drop this, save this line item. You can attach discounts, as I said before, and you can make any sorts of discounts in Stripe. So for example, it might be a percentage off for a period of time, might be a percentage off forever, might be an amount of money off for a period of time, or an amount of money forever. So you can really easily attach them to line items. You can get Stripe to collect that tax automatically. As I said, you can have subscriptions for a specified period of time or just have them open-ended. You can even add free trials right into the user interface. And what happens is that that all gets compiled into what Stripe calls a phase, and then you can add additional phases. So for example, you might want to say, let's have the initial phase for the first 3 months, they get this special pricing, or they get to charge nothing at all. And then they can hit a second phase where they move into a different pricing structure, and then a third phase where they move into another pricing structure. And it's a really kind of simple way to set up that subscription mechanism so that then the client just moves through those phases as their subscription progresses. So that's basically how subscriptions work. I will jump back over here. Stripe has a bunch of no-code features, and there's a lot of power in leveraging these features, because without having to do a large amount of software development, in fact, in some cases, no software development at all, you can automatically integrate these features right into your existing website or even a hyperlink from an email. And you get to do things like completely customize the branding and parts of the functionality they're offered. So I'm going to show you that now. And it's actually surprisingly simple. If we go back to one of our products, this is that recurring $100 a month product. You can just hit this create payment link selection, and over here on the right-hand side, you get a little preview of exactly how this is going to look when the customer clicks on that link on your website. And as you can see, you get this really professional looking checkout here. You can completely brand it to your colors and styles. And over here on the right-hand side, I can say things like, let the customer choose the amount of the item that they're going to get. I can bundle items together right into this section of the system. I can tick extra checkboxes like collecting the customer's extra details like addresses, and including things like adding a free trial. If I want to add a 14-day free trial into it, and you can see right here on the right-hand side, it previews that straight away. And so there's a bunch of features that you can include here, even things like creating promotional codes for discounts that the customers can enter right into this user interface with really no software development effort at all. The other cool thing that we encourage people to use, and sometimes gets a little bit overlooked, is this ability to create a post-payment PDF. So what will happen is that an actual tax invoice will get generated and emailed to the client after the transaction occurs. And what that does is generates an invoice in Stripe that can then get pushed through into your finance systems for reconciliation purposes. There's also a Stripe customer portal that works in a very similar way. You can configure it with checkboxes, and there's just link to it from your website. And when a customer logs into it, it shows them their existing subscriptions. You can let them update their payment details in there. They can even do things like change the level of their subscription if that's something that you want to offer up to them. Stripe metadata is a really interesting feature that's, I guess, something that's not super obvious from the outset. And really what it lets you do is store extra information in Stripe against any of the items. So for example, here I'm in this product called Annual Product A. Down here in the metadata section, I can just add extra elements of data. So think of it like custom fields on steroids. You are basically unlimited. You can have up to 50 of these records per data element, and they can have like up to 500 characters in each one. So we see people using them for a variety of reasons, but some of the main ones are links to other systems. So for example, you can link between your CRM system and Stripe really easily by creating a hyperlink in that metadata field that has the custom ID of that client in the CRM system. And that way you can link between systems, link between finance system and Stripe really easily. You can store additional attributes. So perhaps you've got other elements about this product that you want to store in Stripe. You can treat them effectively as custom fields. But really the big gain that we see is in more flexibility around reporting. So you can include extra attributes against these products or against these clients. And then whenever you export data from Stripe, it will bring that additional data with it. So you get the metadata so that you can then use it in any other reporting systems or even in Excel to be able to categorize, filter, and sort. It can also flow through to other systems like a finance system. And I'll talk to you in a minute about how Stripe can work with Xero, where you can actually flow that metadata right through right through into the finance system and map it to tracking categories at that level. So that's kind of the high-level overview of how we think about configuring Stripe for success. Then the second part of this is about connecting Stripe to your other systems. And there's a whole bunch of ways to do this. We find the primary use case is around finance systems. And there's off-the-shelf functionality in order to do this. So these are like external apps that you can find in the Stripe app marketplace. And all of the major finance systems have some sort of connector available. For Xero, there's a product called Subsync by Finlet. Finlet's actually our sister company, and it's a full-featured integration between Stripe and Xero. So it can provide lots of flexibility, pushing additional detail into Xero and even bringing it back again. So for example, things like you create an invoice in Stripe, it automatically appears in Xero. You can then void it in Xero and it will automatically void it in Stripe. You can accept payment direct into a different sort of bank account outside your Stripe system and it will automatically tell Stripe about it. Similar systems exist for QuickBooks. There's a product called Ahoy that is very popular. And in the NetSuite world, there's a product called Suite Function that provides immensely detailed integration with the NetSuite system, as you would expect in that sort of environment. And then once you get beyond, I guess, no-code solutions and external apps, there's the Stripe API. So the Stripe API provides a very low-level integration straight into the Stripe platform that if you have software developers in your team, they're going to absolutely love it. It's quite straightforward. It's really well documented. And Stripe is fundamentally built using an API-first approach. So all of the functionality exists in Stripe all of the time in the API, and it lets you do all of the things that we've talked about today. So things like creating products and prices right through to dynamically creating subscriptions, metering against those subscriptions, payment links, and things like metadata are all programmatically available in the system. So that's kind of the high-level overview of the best practices that we see that make a real difference in the Stripe system. Wanted to now introduce Ben from Jobman. And what we wanted to do was, I guess, have a little bit of a chat around how Jobman is using Stripe, and in particular around subscriptions. So, Ben, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about your business?
Certainly. Thanks, Nathan. And I see you've lit the fire for me. That's great.
Yeah.
I can feel it's nice and warm. Very nice to see. Okay, yeah. So my name's Ben Hitchcock. I'm the Director of Operations and Technology at Jobman. The business is 14 years old. It started way back when I was employed as a developer, like as a website developer for a company, and I just ran through all their work pretty quickly, and they had an extra. They needed to get me to do something. So they had a client who was a cabinet maker, and they had some software that sort of did a bit of the job of doing their job management, but it could have been improved. So they sat me down and said, all right, we want you to make something for them. So I did. And that product turned into a company, turned into a business. That product, it started out just helping the needs of one cabinet making company, and then they started to sell it to more and more cabinet making companies. So yeah, that's where Jobman started. I'm now like not much of a developer anymore. More of the director and shareholder and manager, that side of things. The Jobman software, up until a few years ago. Now I noticed that you mentioned something, Kaisa, about companies moving towards recurring revenue, so monthly revenue, these subscriptions. And that's exactly where we are. So we had started out having, large chunks of cash up front, big upfront payments, like a deposit, and then, 30 odd grand up front. And that business model we could see was not really cutting the mustard. So it needed to be changed. So we sat down and rewrote the whole thing, start to finish. No shared code. So we've rewritten from scratch. We're basically a startup company now, using the Stripe subscriptions and all the integrations and all this modern code.
And so, what are the Stripe features that have been particularly useful to you, Ben?
Oh, Stripe! My goodness, Stripe is just the best. It is just so good. We could tell right from the start that Stripe was the solution that we wanted to use. And that was mostly because it seems to be written with developers as number one, as the main thing that Stripe, pitches their services to. It's developers. Developers love it. They have just such good documentation. There's integrations inside the admin system for the developers, so they can go off and, for webhook fails, they can just go straight into the admin and retry it, and boop, there it is. It's brilliant. So it's just a fantastic system, by far the best that we've come across. So it was an obvious choice for us to use Stripe.
Cool. And is there like particular features inside of Stripe that you guys have leveraged? You talk about subscriptions. Do you use any of those the pricing sort of models, pricing tiered models that we talked about?
Yeah, the subscriptions they are everything for us. We knew that we had to change from a model where we had people involved every step of the way. So we'd have, a 2-hour demonstration, then we'd have, someone, when we got the deposit, we'd have, one of the developers spend 4 hours setting up databases and setting up websites and setting up GitHub repositories and doing all of this sort of stuff. So we wanted to just eliminate all of that stuff and automate the whole lot. So that starts with Stripe. They have this really easy to set up system for revenue, for recurring revenue for subscriptions. And it's quite easy to add, different pricing models. So we've got monthly and yearly, and we've also got some other little options. So when someone signs up to Jobman, they can select they want supplier integration, or they want cloud file storage, or they want accounting integration, or they want some other little bits and pieces that some people don't want, some people do. So they can just add that to their subscription. And that's all set up, all completely hands-off. The person can find our website, they can decide which package they want. So we've got 3 tiers of package. They choose which one they want and sign up. That goes through the Stripe checkout process. and that fires off a webhook to us. And I could go into more detail maybe later on, but it's all completely hands off for us. It's brilliant.
Nice. So I know that you use Xero yourself as a finance system. I guess, can you tell us about the challenges you faced integrating Stripe with Xero?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got, we've been using Xero for a while. I mean, we see Xero as being quite similar to Stripe in that it's the best system. You don't muck around with anything else. We did find, however, when we started using between Stripe and Xero, we were getting the money, like the records of how much people were paying. That was coming across to Xero fine, but we weren't getting the invoices to come across. And that was a little bit of a problem because, after a couple of months of having this all, running, which I thought was pretty smooth, I realized that the bookkeepers didn't really know how much tax was being applied. So we might know that a client has paid us $300. Great. Were they overseas? Did they pay GST? We don't know. So then there was a flurry of activity. I was madly trying to figure out, which clients were using tax, which weren't, and that sort of thing. And I just couldn't quite figure out why the integration didn't send the invoices across to Xero. So I was just immediately thought, oh, I haven't set it up correctly. But it turns out that that's something that a company called Finlert have solved, and that's where I met you, Nathan. So I signed up to SubSync, and that product solved the problem for us big time. So that means that when Stripe makes an invoice, and Stripe make really good invoices, they're automatic and they look beautiful. That invoice then gets sent across to Xero, and as Nathan mentioned before, that integration goes both ways, and it's just perfect. It works really well for us.
Cool. Do you have any future plans for using more of the Stripe functionality? I know one of the kind of newer features in the RFA suite is revenue recognition, which may be useful for your annual subscriptions. Is that something that you've been thinking about yet?
I haven't really delved into that very much. I've had a quick look at the revenue recognition, but at the stage we are now, it's not really something we're looking at right this very second. We're more looking at just getting more clients on board and just making sure that everything's working. I mean, look, to be honest, it's all working really well at the moment for us. The bookkeeper finds it really easy to reconcile the payments because they all come through, and all of the, there's little fees that various services charge, so they get accounted for as well. So there isn't, that $8 left over that you can't quite figure out where it's gone. It's all recognized properly.
Nice. Now, I know Kaisa likes to ask this next question, so I'm going to hand over to her.
Oh, yeah, I came off mute here. So we have this like Friday fireside chat with our founders every week, and every week there's a user, and the one question that they always ask is, obviously, like, I appreciate all the kind words about Stripe. Thank you for those. It's it's nice to hear. But is there something that Stripe could be doing better, or some functionality that you just wish that we do that we don't do yet? Any like constructive feedback for us from the product or otherwise?
Yeah, you're sort of putting me on the spot here. I've found for the most part it does a really good job. The one thing was the lack of sending invoices across to Xero, which is covered with SubSync. Apart from that, it all seems pretty straightforward. If I could put forward a little bit of constructive feedback, it's that I'd really like to have some notes fields on everything. So, for example, if someone goes and updates a subscription, the client might have rang up and they might be angry, and you want to give them, let's just give them a month free or something, right? So you can set up the subscription to handle that fine. But what you can't do is you can't say, well, I can't find an easy way for the person who's done that to write a note for the next person. So that, they did something a bit weird in their subscription. They want to say, hey, I actually gave this client a month's free, because they had some issues with this, that, and the other. It would be really nice to have more areas for those notes. Apart from
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Do your teams all like log into Stripe to do all these things, or do you have any kind of CRM that you integrate this with?
Oh, we've certainly got a CRM. That's our own software. We eat our own dog food.
Okay.
We link it all up. So when someone signs up with Stripe, it automatically goes into our system, and we've got all their details and makes a job
Yeah.
for them, so we can track their time and all of that sort of stuff. That all
Okay.
works pretty well. But no,
Got it.
to update the subscriptions, we certainly do that inside Stripe.
Yeah.
So we do have a couple of people who log in. And, you know, look, even people forget, you know, I might make a change and then 4 months later, I might go in and say, why is this system,
Yeah.
you know, why isn't it set up properly? And if I had that notes field, I could say, oh, that's why I did it 4 months ago.
Cool. I'll make a note of that. And if you think of anything else, obviously, you have my details now. So
Thank you.
welcome to send it later as well.
Cool. Thanks, Ben. So we have come to the Q&A part of the session. If you've got any questions that you'd like to ask, please use the Q&A functionality in Zoom. You can pop your question in there and then it'll come up for us to have a quick look at. We actually got a couple of questions prior to the session, so I thought we might try and tackle those first. Feel free to jump in, Kaisa or Ben, if you have anything to add. The first one was about how you actually make quotes in Stripe. And I actually had to go and have a look at this one because it wasn't something that we had looked at in the past. But surprisingly, it's very straightforward. So the idea is that when you're in the billing part of the system, you can just hit this little create thing, and then you can actually create a quote. It looks very much like an invoice. So excuse the SpongeBob themed characters in my customers in my test account. But you can basically say, yeah, they want to use this product. They want 10 of them. You can set the tax. You can add other products. You can add your discounts. You can set an expiry date for the quote as well, and all of the standard features that you would expect in Stripe. And then you can finalize it, and you can actually then send that out to clients. They can accept a quote and it turns it into an invoice, or you can actually, we could actually convert it into an invoice on this end. And it's a really kind of simple way for you to transition items from a quote right through to a full-fledged invoice and then actually let somebody pay for it as well. So yeah, that one's a pretty straightforward one. The other one we had was a question about how direct debit works from a bank account as a payment method in Stripe. So once again, that's actually pretty straightforward. When you are setting up your payment methods in the system, or even if you are just creating a invoice, you can actually set your the payment methods that you're going to offer up to that client. So in this case, I've got credit cards, I've got Link, which is Stripe's payment mechanism, I've got WeChat Pay, and I've got Bex Direct Debit, which is the Australian Direct Debit functionality. And basically what happens is that when the client goes to pay that invoice, they can select that payment method. And if they select direct debit, it asks them to input details like their bank account details, their banking provider, and so on and so on. And they actually kind of authorize the whole direct debit directly in that transaction. Then when the subscription comes due and an invoice is generated, it will actually draw on that direct debit authorization that the client made in order to make that payment. Does that kind of cover it off, Kaisa?
I think so. I got nothing to add. We do have another question there in the Q&A from David around payments for membership organizations. So the scenario here is that the membership might be for 12 months and it could be either paid in full or via like a payment plan on the monthly and quarterly kind of installments. But you have to pay the full 12-month anyway. You might be able to add a bit more detail to this, but I would say that we definitely have these use cases. There's a ton of membership organizations using Stripe subscriptions. But Nathan, I'm not sure if you're able to share more detail on exactly how you would achieve that. I also know that we have some customers that have like higher value products that they sell. So they are also doing payments for those via installments by using Stripe invoicing.
Yeah, you can definitely do installments. Or the other way to set it up would be a subscription that's got like a minimum term of 12 months and then set it up as a monthly. And then the consumer can choose to either go for the full 12 months or pay by the month. The other thing you could do in that case is actually offer, you could actually charge slightly less if they pay the whole thing up front and then charge slightly more if they pay by the month. So it does have that sort of functionality. I've got another one here. Maybe this is a good one for you, Kaisa, which is what happens if a card payment fails due to expiry on a let's say they're on a subscription, they've already paid several of their months and now a card payment fails. How does Stripe handle that?
Payment fails due to, I guess, well,
cards
cover the
expired.
broad scenario. Yeah, well, if it's specifically for card being expired, actually in like a lot of instances, we can overcome that and without the customer really having to update their payment details. So there's a product called a card account updater, which basically just we talk to the issuing banks and then automatically we can update those card details as the customer gets a new card. So it's often a non-issue in the Stripe world. Of course, there can be like a lot of other reasons why a card gets declined, and I covered some of those in the smart retries scenario as well. So I guess the key takeaway there is that whatever the reason is, quite often we're able to recover that payment over time.
Cool. I've got another one here from Peter. What if a client changes subscription plans midstream? And this is one that we see a lot. There's actually like really strong functionality right there inside of Stripe. So basically what happens is you can tell Stripe can kind of come in on any day during the subscription period, change the products. So you saw me adding products and removing products from a subscription. You can remove one, you can add a different product that's perhaps at a different price point or a different number of units. And then Stripe automatically calculates that difference. And you can either apply it pro rata to kind of go, okay, bill the difference right now and kind of reset their monthly cycle. Or you can choose to just include that price inside their next monthly payment. So it's really simple and gives you a lot of options for the client to be able to either kind of pay it now or pay it later.
We do that all the time in our business there, Nathan. We have clients, wanting to update their subscription. Pretty much every day we have someone asking to update it. And the Stripe system works really well. We just prorate the changes so that the credit card is either charged or, had a refund straight away. So then they're always up to date.
Yeah, cool. And if it goes the other way, it kind of seems to handle that really well as well. So let's say somebody downgrades, you can either credit money back to the original payment mechanism, or you can use the Stripe customer balance. So effectively it holds the money in abeyance, and then next time an invoice gets generated for that customer, it'll consume that credit before it actually charges anything to their card. One of the other ones we've got here is what happens if a client pays an invoice outside of Stripe. So this is something that we see that's quite common in Australia, where primarily, especially in B2B transactions, companies pay via electronic funds transfer straight into an existing bank account. And, perhaps they'll get an invoice that originates from Stripe that has all sorts of, card payment mechanisms, but they'll still pay the old way into the old bank account. a lot of these systems that integrate with finance systems like Subsync handle that for you. So Stripe treats that as what's called an out-of-band payment. You can accept that payment through some other means, let's say it's cash or through a transfer into a bank account. And then the systems will tell Stripe, hey, this one was paid outside of Stripe. You don't need to chase this one anymore, and you should consider it paid. And the beauty of that is that it still gets included in all your Stripe reporting. So it considers the, let's say you have a monthly recurring revenue number in Stripe, and it will count it in that number, even if the payment wasn't directly collected by Stripe. Got another one here. Can Stripe take direct debit payments, say on recurring zero invoices via a credit card? So it's kind of one or the other. It's either they can do the customer can choose to pay via direct debit, or they can choose to pay via credit card. But yeah, it can be applied to either recurring or once-off invoices. And in Stripe, you can configure what payment methods you have, including Kaisa. I know in recent times that a lot of the buy now, pay later providers were added to Stripe as well.
Yeah, correct. There's a whole range of different payment methods, and we're integrating more all the time, including obviously like in real-time payments is kind of becoming more common here. So things like Pay2 will be coming down the line. I think it's currently in beta, as well as just bank transfers directly in Stripe is something that's on our roadmap. And buy now, pay later we've had for some time. So got Afterpay, Klarna, and Zip in Australia, and it depends a little bit on market. All of the kind of coverage is available online, but yeah, just talk to us to see what are the ones that your customers would want, and we'll see if we can accommodate.
And I know one of the cool things we saw at Stripe Tour Sydney recently was this ability for Stripe Checkout to kind of dynamically offer up different payment methods based on attributes of the customer. So, you know, if they're accessing it from China, it might be more likely to offer up WeChat Pay versus an Indian customer versus a customer from the UK. And so Stripe now has this dynamic functionality where it can try to offer up the best possible payment mechanisms based on the customer.
Yeah, correct. And then if you want to have a bit more control over that too, there's things like A/B testing now. I think we're the only payments provider that actually does that out of the box, like straight from the dashboard. So if you're considering some of the slightly higher cost payment methods like the buy now, pay later, you might want to first test to see that it doesn't cannibalize your existing volume, that you can actually get uplift in order value and just overall revenue. So you can easily just determine like, I want to offer, say, Afterpay for 10% of my traffic, and off you go. And then you can analyze the results before you launch it out to everyone.
Yeah, that's a cool feature.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. It sounds like it looks like the Q&A has dried up, and we're just about at time anyway. Thank you very much for your time today and your attendance. Thanks so much, Ben, for telling us about your business and how it's benefited from using Stripe. And thank you very much.
Welcome. Thanks for the invite. Really appreciate it.
No problem. And
thanks everyone for joining, and thanks Nathan and Ben. Have a good day all.
And please reach out if you've got any questions or if you want to follow up on anything. Thanks so much.